There are moments in life when we sense something beneath the surface, something unspoken but heavy. A shift in someone's tone, a glance that lasts too long or not long enough, a coldness that feels familiar but still stings. And though no words are said, we feel it in our bones. They hate us. There are many forms of violence in this world, but the most insidious are those that leave no bruise. When someone who harbors deep resentment towards you sees you rise, whether in success, creativity, or even self-awareness, they are confronted not just with your progress, but with their own perceived inadequacy. And when they are unwilling to confront that inadequacy within themselves, they turn it outward. They try to tear you down, not with open attack, but with the slow, acidic drip of diminishing your worth. At first, these moments pass unnoticed. You mention a new opportunity, and their response is dry, indifferent. You show pride in something you built, and they glance away, mutter something like, "That's nice, I guess." Or worse, they change the subject altogether. You think maybe they're just having a bad day. Maybe they're distracted, but then it happens again and again. And eventually, it begins to erode something inside you that was once glowing. You find yourself hesitating before sharing good news. You dull your brightness to make them more comfortable. You laugh awkwardly when they downplay your efforts, unsure whether to defend yourself or pretend not to care. You begin to wonder, am I overreacting? Am I imagining this? And here lies the cruelty. The diminishing isn't just an external act, it gets inside you. It makes you question your right to be proud. But this isn't a coincidence. It's a pattern. A deliberate behavior that reflects something deeply unresolved in the person doing it. People who are at peace with themselves do not need to tear others down to feel tall. Those who feel whole can celebrate others without feeling diminished. But those who harbor secret hatred, whether born of envy, insecurity, or resentment, can only respond to your light by trying to extinguish it. There was once a man who spent 10 years writing a book he poured his soul into. When he finally published it, he handed a copy to a longtime friend. The friend smiled weakly and said, "Everyone's writing books these days. Publishing isn't what it used to be." No congratulations, no curiosity, just a dagger dressed as commentary. The man smiled back politely, but inside he felt a cold wind pass through him. Later, he admitted that moment haunted him more than any rejection letter from a publisher ever did. Because this wasn't a stranger. This was someone who was supposed to care. But what he didn't understand at the time was that the friend didn't hate his book. He hated what the book represented. It was a symbol of movement, of transformation, of courage. And the friend had given up those parts of himself long ago. People who hate you will often be drawn to you, like moths to a flame. Not because they want your warmth, but because your fire reminds them of everything they've extinguished in themselves. They may stand close, but they are not safe. They will mock your ambition not because it's misguided, but because it reveals their lack of purpose. They will dismiss your talents, not because they're unremarkable, but because they shine, a light on their own ignored gifts. They will critique your confidence not because you're arrogant, but because they're still shackled by self-doubt. And what makes this so damaging is that they often couch it in tones of realism. "I'm just being honest. I don't want you to get your hopes up. You're not that special." These statements, repeated over time, become like invisible shackles on your spirit. Because unlike open hatred, which is easy to spot and easier to reject, this kind of disdain masquerades as concern. It pretends to protect you, when in truth, it poisons you. In psychological terms, this behavior stems from a fractured ego, one that cannot stand to witness wholeness in another. When the self has not integrated its own shadow, its fear of being small, its rage at being overlooked, it projects that resentment onto others who appear to be thriving. And instead of facing the discomfort within, it seeks to control the outer world. It tells you you're too ambitious, too confident, too hopeful, too much. But in truth, it is not you who are too much. It is they who have become too little in their own eyes, and you remind them of it. So what do we do in the face of this kind of hatred? First, we must learn to name it. The soul can endure almost anything, but it cannot heal from what it refuses to see. We must stop explaining away the coldness, the eye rolls, the sarcasm. We must stop shrinking ourselves to fit into the fragile egos of others. And we must remember that our light is not a threat. It is a gift. Not everyone will be ready to receive it. And that is not our fault. Second, we must resist the urge to fight hatred with hatred. The ego wants to retaliate. It wants to shout, "You're just jealous," or cut off contact in anger. But the deeper self knows that most hatred comes from pain. This doesn't mean we tolerate disrespect or remain close to those who hurt us. But it does mean we respond with clarity, not vengeance. We protect our light without dimming it. Finally, we must reclaim our right to be proud. When you've worked for something, when you've struggled, healed, sacrificed, endured, you deserve to stand in the fullness of your achievement, not in arrogance, but in truth. Your joy does not require permission. Your worth is not dependent on anyone else's comfort. There is a quiet rebellion in allowing yourself to glow when others would rather you be invisible. It is an act of spiritual strength to say, "Yes, I did this. Yes, I'm proud. Yes, I will keep growing even if it makes you uncomfortable." And the truth is, your very existence is already evidence of something powerful. If someone hates you enough to diminish you, it means they've seen your light, even if only for a moment. And though they may try to make you doubt it, never forget, no one throws stones at what they do not secretly fear or envy. The challenge is not to make them love you. It's to love yourself enough to no longer need them to. When you understand this, truly understand it, hatred loses its sting. And in its place, something stronger rises. The courage to be seen, even when others refuse to look. There is a deep cruelty in the world that does not come from raised voices or sharp knives, but from laughter. The laughter aimed not at joy, but at suffering. When someone truly harbors hatred, they do not merely ignore your pain. They twist it into a weapon against you. And often, this cruelty is cloaked in the casual ease of a joke, a sarcastic remark, or a light-hearted comment meant to dismiss what is most vulnerable inside you. Pain is a sacred language of the soul. It speaks when the heart is broken, when the spirit is wounded, when the unseen scars beneath the surface ache for recognition. To share this pain with another person is to open a door to intimacy, to trust. But when that pain is met with mockery, it is as if the door is slammed shut, trapping you in silence and solitude. The wound becomes deeper, not because the original hurt has changed, but because the very act of expressing it has been betrayed. Imagine a woman who speaks quietly of the loss of her childhood home, a place that held her memories, her dreams, her sense of belonging. She shares this with someone she calls a friend. Instead of receiving comfort, she hears a chuckle and a dismissive, "Well, you're just being sentimental." That laughter is a sharp-edged blade. It says, "Your pain is ridiculous, your grief is a joke, your feelings are not valid." This is not just insensitivity. It is a reflection of hatred's way of erasing the other's humanity. When you mock someone's pain, you deny the sacredness of their inner world. You make a statement, "I refuse to see your wounds because they remind me of my own unhealed parts, and I would rather ridicule than confront the discomfort that your suffering stirs within me." It is no accident that those who mock pain are often the ones least able to face their own. Behind their laughter is a fortress built of denial and fear. They have locked away their own sorrows, hidden their own traumas, and refuse to let anyone, especially you, hold the mirror that reflects their brokenness back to them. So instead they strike first, deflecting attention from their own vulnerabilities by making yours appear small and absurd. This behavior is familiar to many, yet it is seldom spoken of openly, because who wants to admit that the people they trust most might be the ones to turn their pain into a punchline? The difficulty lies in the fact that mockery is disguised as humor, and humor is often welcomed in social settings. A sarcastic joke can be dismissed as just teasing, and the victim is left questioning their own sensitivity. Am I overreacting? Should I just laugh it off? The confusion is part of the cruelty. It isolates the one in pain, making them feel weak for feeling at all. One story I recall is of a young man who survived a difficult childhood marked by neglect. When he finally found the courage to speak of his experiences, A person close to him responded with a smirk and said, "Well, that explains why you're so dramatic." The words were simple, the delivery casual, but the impact was profound. The young man withdrew, retreating into himself, reluctant to share again. The mockery had not only denied his suffering, it had told him that his very experience was a flaw, a character defect. This pattern is not limited to individuals. Sometimes entire communities mock the pain of certain groups. History shows us time and again how those in power diminish the suffering of the marginalized through ridicule or disbelief. The trauma of a people is turned into a caricature, a punchline for those who refuse to confront the justice of their claims. It is a social mechanism of hatred, designed to keep the status quo and silence voices that demand healing and change. But let us return to the intimate scale, where this cruelty often does the most damage. When someone who is supposed to care about you mocks your pain, the betrayal is twofold. It injures the wound and it fractures trust. You begin to wonder if your pain is too much for anyone to bear, if vulnerability is a weakness that invites contempt rather than compassion. Yet, the soul does not lie. Deep inside, you know that your pain is real, that your grief is justified, that your wounds deserve to be held gently, not ridiculed. And here lies the paradox. Those who mock pain are often the ones most afraid of it. They have not learned that true strength comes not from denial, but from facing pain with courage. They have not discovered that compassion is a balm that heals, both the wounded and the witness. When a person hates you, they turn your pain into their weapon because they cannot face their own. But when you learn to hold your pain as sacred, when you honor your own suffering instead of hiding it, you begin to break their power over you. You become impervious to their mockery, because your truth shines brighter than their shadow. It is not easy to heal when your pain is mocked. It is one of the loneliest forms of hurt, but healing begins with witnessing your own pain without judgment, without apology. It begins with finding or becoming the person who will listen without laughter, who will hold space without scorn. Because to be seen and accepted in your suffering is a profound act of restoration. Consider the power of a simple act, telling your story to someone who listens with open heart and silent understanding. No jokes, no sarcasm, just presence. This alone can unravel the twisted threads of mockery and begin to weave a new pattern, one of empathy, respect, and love. And so, when you encounter those who mock your pain, remember that their laughter is not about you. It is a reflection of what they cannot bear to look at within themselves. Do not let their cruelty convince you to shrink or silence your suffering. Your pain is part of your journey. It is the language of your soul calling you to deeper awareness and wholeness. You are not alone in this. Many have walked the path of vulnerability only to be met with laughter. But many have also found the courage to keep speaking, keep feeling, keep healing. And in doing so, they transform their pain into power. The journey from pain to healing is a sacred pilgrimage. It requires patience, kindness, and above all, faith in your own worth. When someone mocks your pain, do not retreat. Instead, step forward into the light of your truth, knowing that your wounds are not marks of shame but signs of survival and strength. In the end, the voice of mockery will fade because it is hollow, but the voice of your pain, when honored and embraced, will sing a song of healing that resonates far beyond the reach of hatred. And through this song, your soul finds its way back to wholeness. There is a profound pain in invisibility, a suffering that goes far beyond physical solitude. To be unseen, truly unseen by those around us, is a wound of the soul. When a person hates you deeply, one of their most cruel acts is the deliberate refusal to acknowledge your presence when it truly matters. It is not simply that they overlook you by accident. It is a conscious act of erasure, a quiet annihilation of your very being in their world. We humans are creatures of recognition. From the earliest moments of life, we seek acknowledgement, from the eyes that meet ours, from the voices that call our names, from the gestures that say, "I see you." This acknowledgement affirms our existence. It says, "You are here. You are important. You matter." Without it, we begin to doubt the very foundation of our being. Imagine a child, standing on the edge of a room filled with people who all turn away. No one smiles. No one calls the child's name. No one even glances in their direction. The child's heart, still tender and fragile, begins to shrink. The child wonders, am I real? Am I worthy of attention? That early experience of being unseen can cast a long shadow into adulthood. And the cruel truth is this: when a person harbors hatred for you, they often use this weapon of invisibility with devastating effect. In moments when your presence calls for recognition, when you seek comfort, when you celebrate, when you struggle, they turn away. They refuse to validate your existence because to acknowledge you would be to admit your power, your worth, your reality. This refusal is a form of psychological erasure. It is a silent scream. It says, you do not matter to me. Your experiences, your feelings, your very being are insignificant. Unlike overt hostility, which confronts you openly, this invisibility is more insidious because it saps your sense of self slowly, stealthily. There was a woman who confided in me once about her experience with a family member who hated her deeply. During times of crisis, when she needed support, when she sought comfort, this relative would simply act as though she did not exist. No phone calls, no visits, no words. The absence was palpable. She described the feeling as being trapped in a glass box, visible to the world but untouchable by the one person she longed to reach. The silence was louder than any insult. It was a wound that never quite healed. The act of refusing to acknowledge someone's existence is rooted in a deep fear and denial. It is a refusal to see another's truth because that truth threatens to unbalance the hater's fragile world. If you are acknowledged, you have a place in reality, and that place is one they do not wish to share. Their hatred blinds them to the humanity before them. They seek to erase you as a way of preserving their own sense of control, their own narrative. This behavior is common in toxic relationships, but it is not limited to personal encounters. Entire social systems can engage in this erasure. Groups, marginalized by society, often experience this collective invisibility, denied representation, denied voice, denied existence in public discourse. The psychological effect is the same, the ache of being unseen, the erosion of self-worth. But what happens when someone refuses to acknowledge you? How does the soul respond to such a profound negation? At first, you may try harder to be seen. You raise your voice, make more noise, seek validation in louder ways. You yearn for recognition so deeply that it shapes your every action. But the harder you try, the more elusive acknowledgement becomes. The refusal to see you becomes a mirror reflecting your own invisibility back at you. It is a trap that can ensnare the spirit in despair. Yet within this despair lies a secret path toward healing. The soul, in its wisdom, knows that external recognition is never enough. No matter how much we seek it from others, true acknowledgement must begin within. It must be an internal flame that burns independently of another's gaze. To reclaim your existence in the face of invisibility is an act of courage and defiance. It means affirming your worth even when the world refuses to do so. It means looking into the mirror of your own eyes and saying, I see you. You matter. You are real. This inner acknowledgement becomes a fortress of strength that cannot be dismantled by the neglect or hatred of others. Consider the many artists, writers, and thinkers throughout history who were ignored or dismissed in their lifetimes. Their existence was denied by those around them, yet their truth endured because they acknowledged themselves first. They nurtured their inner flame until the world could no longer ignore their light. In this way, refusal to acknowledge your existence is not the end of your story. It is a call to awaken the deep well of self-recognition within. When you cultivate this inner witness, you begin to heal the wounds inflicted by others' blindness. You discover that your sense of self is not dependent on the fragile approval of those who hate you, but on the unshakable truth of your own being. This process is not easy. It requires patience, compassion, and the willingness to face loneliness without despair. It asks you to embrace your solitude, not as punishment, but as a sacred space where your soul can grow, undisturbed by the judgments of others. In time, you will find that those who refuse to see you become less important. Their refusal loses its power as your own acknowledgement shines brighter. And paradoxically, your presence becomes so undeniable that even the most hateful can no longer ignore. The refusal to acknowledge someone is a shadow that seeks to erase. But the soul, when nurtured with love and awareness, can become a beacon that calls the unseen into being. It reminds us that our existence is not granted by others. It is ours to claim, and in claiming it, you break the chains of hatred that sought to bind you. You rise not because others have chosen to see you, but because you have chosen to see yourself. This is the true triumph of the human spirit. There is a certain kind of hostility that speaks not in loud accusations or overt aggression, but in the silent withholding of truth, especially when it comes to the way someone chooses to share your story, your character, your very essence with the world. When a person harbors a deep hatred, they may seek to distort your image before others, twisting facts and painting you in shadows, so that those around them come to question your integrity, your intentions, your very soul. This act of manipulation is a subtle, yet potent weapon. It does not assault you directly with confrontation, but rather attacks the delicate web of relationships and perceptions that shape your existence. By spreading falsehoods, exaggerations, or carefully curated half-truths, the hater aims to isolate you, to sever your bonds with others, and to diminish your presence in the collective consciousness. To understand this, we must first appreciate the fundamental human need for reputation, not vanity but something far more primal. Our identity is not formed solely by what we know or feel inside ourselves. It is also shaped by the reflections we see in the eyes of others. Our social mirror shows us who we are through the reactions, judgments, and stories told by the people around us. When that mirror is cracked by lies, it fractures the sense of self, creating confusion and despair. Consider the story of a man whose past was rewritten by a former friend turned enemy. This man had always been honest, straightforward, and loyal, yet over time whispers began to circulate. Small exaggerations of his mistakes grew into stories of betrayal. His kindness was recast as cunning, his generosity as manipulation. Those who knew him well struggled to reconcile the man they loved with the image painted by his detractor. Slowly he found himself isolated, distrusted, and diminished, not by his own deeds but by the lies that stole his narrative. This experience is far from rare. It is a hallmark of hatred to seek power not only through direct confrontation but through the quiet undermining of truth. To distort someone's story is to rob them of the agency to tell it themselves. It is an act of domination, a way to control the perceptions of others and, by extension, to control the person being defamed. In these moments, the victim is caught in a web of confusion. How can one defend against shadows when the very ground beneath seems unstable? The struggle to reclaim one's truth can feel overwhelming, especially when those who hear the lies choose to believe them rather than question. Trust becomes a fragile thing, broken by the weight of deception. Yet, there is a profound lesson hidden within this painful ordeal. The distortion of your story is not the end of your truth. It is a challenge to reclaim it with greater clarity and strength. The soul, when faced with falsehood, has an opportunity to deepen its self-awareness, to distinguish between the stories imposed by others and the reality known within. This requires courage, not just to speak your truth, but to live it authentically despite the false narrative swirling around you. It is an invitation to become the author of your own story in the face of attempts to rewrite it. Your identity is not merely what others say about you. It is the living, breathing reality of your thoughts, actions, and values. There is a paradox here. The lies told to diminish you may ultimately illuminate your character more clearly than any praise ever could. When confronted by false accusations, the way you respond reveals the depth of your integrity and resilience. Those who stand, firm in their truth even amidst slander, show a strength that cannot be easily erased. Consider also the power of silence and patience in this process. Reacting impulsively to every distortion can entangle you further in conflict and pain. But choosing when and how to respond, holding space for truth to emerge over time, can be a radical act of self-possession. This mindful response unsettles the hater's aim, for it refuses to feed the fire of chaos and instead plants seeds of understanding and clarity. It is vital, too, to seek allies who will witness your truth without judgment or distortion. In the tapestry of human relationships, genuine connection is a shield against the corrosive effects of lies. When others hold a true image of you, they become living proof that the distortions are not the whole story. This network of truth-tellers can become a sanctuary where your soul finds refuge and strength. But beyond external validation lies the deepest source of restoration, the inner truth that remains unshaken by false narratives. This truth is not reliant on external perception. It is rooted in the essence of your being, the quiet knowing that you are more than the sum of others' words. To nurture this inner truth is to cultivate an unbreakable foundation beneath the shifting sands of reputation. This cultivation is a sacred act of self-love and healing. It calls for reflection, meditation, and sometimes the willingness to face the darker parts of oneself that others may exploit or misunderstand. By embracing your whole self, the light and the shadow, you become whole in a way that no outside distortion can fragment. It is often through these trials of defamation and mistrust that we come to realize the true nature of identity. It is not a fragile construct built on public opinion, but a living, evolving journey inward. The lies told by others, though painful, are echoes of their own fears and insecurities projected outward. They seek to diminish you because they cannot bear the fullness of your presence. When you understand this, the sting of distortion loses much of its power. You begin to see the hater not as a tyrant controlling your fate, but as a troubled soul acting out of pain and confusion. This does not excuse the harm done, but it opens the door to compassion, compassion for yourself as you endure, and compassion for those who strike from a place of inner torment. And so, the path forward is one of reclaiming your narrative, not through force or retaliation, but through the quiet strength of living authentically and consistently. Truth has a way of revealing itself over time, like the slow rising of dawn after a long night. The lies may cast shadows, but they cannot extinguish the light of a soul rooted in integrity. Your story, with all its complexity and nuance, belongs to you alone. No matter how others twist it, it remains a sacred thread woven into the fabric of your existence. To own that story fully is to reclaim your power, your dignity, and your freedom. In this act of reclaiming, you do more than survive. You transform. You rise beyond the distortions to embody the fullness of who you are, and in doing so, you inspire others to seek their own truth amidst the noise of falsehood. This is the victory that hatred cannot touch, the triumph of a soul that refuses to be rewritten, a spirit that shines unbroken through the darkest of lies. There is a particular kind of cruelty that reveals itself not in open confrontation, but in the subtle, persistent act of betrayal. The betrayal that comes when someone you once trusted turns away from you in your most vulnerable moments. This act is not merely a fracture in the relationship. It is a wound inflicted deep within the heart, where the soul's yearning for connection meets the cold reality of abandonment. When a person hates you deeply, they often choose to betray you precisely at those times when you seek refuge, comfort, or understanding, and this betrayal speaks volumes about the depth of their feelings. The human heart is built for trust. From childhood, we learn to place our faith in those around us, to believe that when the night is dark, someone will be there to hold the light. This trust forms the foundation of our relationships, the very fabric that binds us together in shared experience and mutual care. To betray that trust is to shatter this fabric, leaving behind a ragged tapestry of doubt, fear, and loneliness. Consider the experience of a young woman who shared her most intimate struggles with a close friend, struggles of anxiety, loss, and heartbreak. She confided in this friend, believing her vulnerability would be met with empathy and support. Yet when she needed that friend most, she found the door closed, the phone unanswered, the warmth replaced by cold silence. The betrayal was not just in the absence but in the knowing that her pain was disregarded, her humanity dismissed. This silence was louder than any harsh word, a deafening echo of rejection. Such betrayals are not accidental, they are deliberate choices. To turn away when another suffers is an act of violence against the spirit. It signals that the person's pain is insignificant, unworthy of compassion, or worse, that their suffering is a burden too great to bear. This refusal to stand beside another in hardship is often rooted in fear of confronting one's own vulnerabilities, fear of being drawn into the storm, or fear of the power that genuine empathy demands. This fear manifests as hatred because it is easier to reject and betray than to engage with the messy, painful complexity of human suffering. Hatred cloaks itself in avoidance. It whispers that caring is dangerous, that connection leads to weakness. So the hater withdraws, betrays, and leaves the other stranded in their darkest hour. Yet it is precisely in these moments of betrayal that the soul is called to awaken to a deeper truth. The pain of abandonment, as searing as it is, can become a catalyst for self-discovery and inner growth. When those we rely upon fail us, we are forced to turn inward, to find the resilience and compassion within ourselves that we once sought externally. This inward turn is not a retreat, but a journey towards self-reliance and healing. It is an invitation to become your own refuge, your own source of comfort and understanding. The soul learns to cradle its own wounds, to soothe its own fears, and to speak words of kindness in the silence left by others. There's a profound freedom in this realization that your worth and healing are not dependent on the presence or absence of others. You are complete in yourself, capable of meeting your own pain with courage and grace. This does not mean that betrayal does not hurt, or that the wounds vanish overnight. It means that over time, the soul builds a sanctuary within, a sacred space, untouched by the betrayals of others. In the process, you also come to understand that betrayal often reflects more about the betrayer than the betrayed. Those who turn away may be trapped in their own fears, their own inability to face pain and vulnerability. Their hatred and betrayal are symptoms of inner torment, not judgments on your worth. This understanding does not excuse the betrayal, but it softens the sting with compassion. It allows you to grieve the loss of trust without being consumed by bitterness or resentment. You mourn what was broken, but you also honor the part of yourself that remains whole and unbroken. Healing from betrayal requires patience and gentle care for the self. It asks you to reclaim the parts of your spirit that were shattered and to weave them back together with threads of self-love and acceptance. It invites you to surround yourself with those who truly see you and who will not abandon you in your pain. Moreover, this journey reveals the profound truth that sometimes the deepest wounds lead to the greatest strength. Like a tree that grows stronger in the storm, the soul that has weathered betrayal learns to stand tall, its roots digging deeper into the earth of self-awareness and resilience. You come to realize that betrayal, as devastating as it is, cannot define you unless you allow it. It is a chapter in your story, not the entirety of it. You are more than the pain inflicted by another's hatred. You are the healing that rises from it, the light that persists in the darkest night. And so, in the face of betrayal, the soul is called to rise, to choose healing over despair, to embrace self-compassion over self-recrimination, and to trust once more, not necessarily in others, but in the enduring strength within. This is the triumph that no betrayal can steal, the reclamation of your own power to heal, to love, and to live authentically, regardless of the wounds left behind by those who once turned away.